Hey everyone, are you healing from childhood bullying? Are you looking to understand the impacts that it has had on your life and ways you can go forward and reclaim those parts of yourself that you may have lost along the way? If so, this is the conversation for you. Welcome to my channel. My name is Marissa Price. I'm a Black woman social worker, writer, and healer, and this channel is dedicated to supporting us as we heal collectively, share our stories, share resources with each other, and heal, right? And heal through that. But today I have a wonderful guest with me today, Catrina Marie, who is a holistic business coach and mental health advocate. But I will pass it over to her to introduce herself.
Absolutely. Hi, Marissa. And hey there, everybody. It's such an honor to be here. It's a pleasure. Honestly, I'm super excited for this conversation today. Marissa, I'm happy to be here to join you and serve your incredible community of Nubian queens. Hey there, queens. I actually
Yeah.
have my whole Nubian queen look going on here today. Hello, everyone joining us live or whomever catches this on the replay. And also to my community who are tuning in now from various platforms. So I'll be giving you my undivided attention, of course, but I am also looking around because I also want to pay particular attention to those who have joined us elsewhere. So my name is Catrina Marie, and amongst many of my gazillion trillion titles, I am a nurse, a healer, a health and wellness educator, a legal nurse consultant, and as Marissa mentioned, a mental health advocate and a holistic business coach. And I teach successful corporate career women and high achieving women entrepreneurs how to build an aligned and profitable online brand and business while putting their health, healing, and happiness first. But to set the tone for this conversation, I would be remiss if I didn't share that I'm also a survivor. I am a survivor of childhood bullying, of sexual assault, raped by the time I was 16 years old, toxic relationships, and hostile work environments. And so, growing up, just to give you some context around how we got here and why I'm so passionate about doing this work, is that I was raised by my mother, a beautiful Black queen, strong woman, single parent, in the hood. So we grew up poor by financial class, but was smothered in the riches of her love. And despite the challenges that we were faced, my mother did give us a very strong foundation, right? My sister and I, of love and support. However, I did witness my mother endure the torment of bullying from my father. I have two fathers. One who was married and had a family of his own. So he married out, to someone else and had other children, but he battled alcoholism and he is now in recovery, thank God. But then I also had a father who my mother married, and he struggled very badly from a drug addiction. And that experience, God rest his soul, he died trying to get sober and never could. But that experience left a lasting imprint on me. And I found myself battling or facing similar challenges and navigating through childhood and school and relationships and even in my corporate career in corporate America, right? So my journey has really been one of learning how to heal and how to reclaim my voice and my power and how to help others do the same. And so today I dedicate my life, my entire life has been dedicated really to empowering women, especially in the last decade or so, especially Black women, women of color, women over 40, women of the LGBTQ plus communities, because we are the underserved populations, but we are so deserving of so much of a better life, right? But my priority is really to teach you how to prioritize your entire well-being, right? And to find your voice and then to walk into the magnitude of your greatness. So that has been my mission and my ministry for a very long time.
I love that. I love that. Thank you for sharing that with us. And yeah, just your point about health, healing, and happiness, right? We don't often see those in business in the
Mm-hmm.
same sentence. So anything you want to share around like how your business is different, it takes a different perspective on
For sure.
business, right? When it comes to that, like incorporating these things that we need to be well while you're also navigating entrepreneurship. So anything you want to share around that?
Well, yeah, I started off over 2 decades ago. So first, let me just say, kind of going back, I started. Let's see, I worked in corporate America for about 30 long years, and I was a
Mhm.
job hopper, so I didn't stay in one particular position for that length of time. I had a variety of roles. Um, I actually started off much like you, Marissa, in social work, but then I transitioned into
Ooh.
healthcare.
Mhm.
And so spending that length of time in corporate America, I would say I was always, at least for the past 2 decades, a parallelpreneur where I always had an entrepreneurial spirit. And
Mhm.
I always knew that even going to the bedside to do nursing, I knew I could excel better when I could be in a position where I could affect change, right? So when I was a bedside nurse, I knew that I was going to be there long enough to just establish like a really strong clinical foundation. And then I was going to pursue leadership roles because I really wanted to affect change because of the poor quality of leadership. And so during that journey, I also discovered that I was better off being an entrepreneur, but I kind of stuck with what I was familiar with in the realm of nursing. So I've done a variety of things. I won't bore you with all of the a variety of jobs that I've held, but I've held lots of roles. But for the tenure of my career, I've been in a lot of leadership roles. And when I got into entrepreneurship and really started this particular business in the online coaching and consulting space, that really began and kind of unfolded organically when women were coming up to me saying, how did I have all of these different successes in various parts of my life? And as I started to work with those women, I learned very quickly that it wasn't really just about how to help them transition out of a toxic job or how to help them to just change careers, right? Or how to get into the business world. And it wasn't always about the systems and the structures and the strategies. Sometimes what I realized is that these women were misaligned, and they were misaligned because they weren't doing work that they were passionate about and that was in alignment with their deepest aspirations and their core values. And I also realized that some of these women weren't having the external successes that they sought after because they did not heal internally, right? They were looking in the wrong places. They were looking for
Mm.
those external things to help them feel better and to help them feel happy, but the real work had to be done internally. So that's when I sort of made a pivot, sort of rebranded and shifted my focus on the healing, the health issues, and the happiness that women were not experiencing to the degree that they wanted, despite them finding successes academically and in their corporate careers. They weren't finding it in other places of their lives. So
Ooh.
I sort of merged
Yeah.
that together. And that does make me very unique in the marketplace because a lot of people come from the angle of, I'm just going to teach you how to build a business and to build a brand and to, have a business in this online space. That's great. But what about your soul needing nurturing?
Oh.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
so that really then became my mission, is to just help more women heal. Because when you heal, then everything else, is secondary to that. And the success you're looking for externally will follow.
Ooh, I love that. That just brought up so many things that resonated, right? As a new entrepreneur,
Mm,
realizing like a lot of the wounds that I've had. That's why I'm having to go back and like comb through childhood. Because when you're
yeah,
an entrepreneur, it's like, oh my gosh, they show up in full force, right? Things
right.
that you didn't even know about, like
Mm-hmm.
abandonment wounds is something I've been dealing
Mm,
with as an entrepreneur. So just like having that perspective on business, I feel like is so unique and it's needed, especially for
yeah,
Black women.
for sure. For
Yeah, yeah, I
sure.
love that. But yeah, I do want to ask you any experiences with childhood bullying and how they impacted your life, other than the ones you've already shared with us, and how those experiences continue to impact you in adulthood.
Absolutely. Well, as much as I'd like this to be true, it is not. Unfortunately, bullying doesn't end when the school bell rings, right? And it doesn't end when we graduate. Actually, it can follow us into our adult lives, and it can manifest in our self-esteem, in our relationships, and even in our health. And so from a very young age, I faced various forms of mistreatment, which over a long period of time took a toll on me emotionally and mentally. So for years, Marissa, I carried the weight of those experiences into my adult life. The bullying didn't just occur in school. It showed up in work, my workplace. It showed up in my personal relationships. And so, although I appeared fine, air quotes, right, on the outside, the Scars, I would say it's not just about the bruises you can see. It's about the
Mm-hmm.
bruises that you cannot see, right? And those bruises are usually on the inside, internally, on your heart and in your mind, right? It's long lasting. So, as we say in healthcare, the issues are in the tissues, meaning unresolved trauma can reside in the body until we address it. At some point, we gotta give it an eviction notice. We gotta say, look, you got to go. You cannot live here anymore. You know what I mean? Because otherwise it will take comfort in knowing that it's got a place to call home. And we don't want that.
Mm-hmm. That's so very true.
Yeah,
Um, that's a new saying to me. The issues are in the tissues. I love that, but our bodies do hold these very traumatic memories,
for
right? And it's
sure.
only like being in environments that are familiar to what we experienced
Hmm.
when we were bullied in childhood. And like you
Yeah.
said, now you're in a workplace where you're experiencing the same thing and your body
Hmm.
responds similarly. You may not
Yeah.
even be consciously aware of that, but it's
Yeah.
reminding you of something that you survived very early on. Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, 100%. Yes, anything you like to share around what your healing process has looked like from these experiences that you've had with bullying?
Well, I take a deep sigh on that note because healing has been a journey. It's not something that we can rush, right? It's a really and truly, it's a journey. For me, it started with recognizing how the past really shaped my experiences, right? And how these same experiences just kept showing up in my life repeatedly, be it, and the secondary issues were the health issues. So migraine headaches is something that I suffered from, and they were debilitating. Okay.
Mhm.
In fact, so much so that I had to plan my life around these migraines. Um, Fibroids that, a lot of women get and they don't talk about, stress, unexplained weight gain,
Mhm.
lots of physical symptoms like joint pain and musculoskeletal issues, which I still suffer from. And it's something else that's very common amongst women who suffer from these things. Uh, I would say is chronic fatigue. So sometimes we're looking for the rest that we need, right? And we're thinking, oh, we're just working ourselves too much. We're striving too much. We're driving ourselves, like we're overworking ourselves. And that could be true. Um, but sometimes when we're getting enough rest and we still find that we're very tired, people oftentimes are looking at the wrong things. It might not be just your body that's tired. It could absolutely be your soul is tired. And
Mm.
so when I started realizing that's what it was for me, I started working from a deeper level, meaning healing from a deeper level. And so my advice to Black women and women of color is to start by acknowledging the impact of these experiences, right? And doing the work to heal your wounded inner child that has been clinging onto you for your entire life. And I know this can be difficult to do because I've had to do it, and the reason why it's difficult is that it requires a level of depth, right? It requires you to peel back the layers um, and dig deep into your psyche where you buried your past. But it is absolutely necessary for growth. I strongly recommend seeking support from not just traditional therapy, which is nothing wrong with that, but
Mhm.
trauma informed therapy and or a
Mhm.
trusted professional. Because
Yeah.
trying to heal on your own just makes this a very long journey. Okay. But with help, it becomes much more manageable. The truth is that oftentimes we think we can heal on our own. We can do this by ourselves, right? And you can probably do some of the work and make progress, and that's fine. But you'll heal a lot faster, much sooner if you actually get professional help. Because if we could heal on our own, by this big old age, we would have done so already, right? Let's just tell the truth and shame the devil.
Mhm.
We would have done it already. So I would say stop trying to do it on your own. And if had I gotten professional help years ago when I really needed it, I would have saved myself from unnecessary heartaches and health issues and heartbreaks. So don't wait, don't hesitate, don't procrastinate because there is such thing as too late. Make sure you're getting the help that you need in order to succeed. And so just so everybody's aware, I just did a presentation during my live stream yesterday on my channel talking about how you heal the inner child, a wounded inner child, giving a breakdown of that. If anybody's interested, I think it would be valuable for you to hear how I break that down. And so I would encourage you to watch that episode if you really need to know how to go through that process specifically.
Yeah. And something that you mentioned on the live yesterday is trauma informed
Mm-hmm,
therapy. And I think
mm-hmm.
that's so important because you mentioned, like, yeah, trauma informed, what happened to you versus what's wrong with you. We often
Right.
see messaging like, what's wrong with you? You can't show up this way. You're like, you're acting
Right.
this way. It's like, go to the roots, right? What has
Exactly.
happened to you? What has
Mm-hmm.
happened to you throughout your life that is now causing you to show up this way? And I
Yeah.
feel like that's a much more empathetic, gentle approach with yourself, even
Mm-hmm.
when you're understanding how bullying or workplace mistreatment has affected your life, right?
Well, it really is true, Marissa, because if you think about it, I mean, and so sometimes it's hard to think about it from our own lens when we're not healed, right? And if you kind of just look outside of yourself for a minute from the
Mhm.
lens of somebody who is on the outside looking in per se,
Right.
no more than we would be reaching for a child who was neglected for years, right? Because they experienced trauma like childhood, wait, when am I saying that right? Childhood bullying. Couldn't get
Mhm.
that out. We want to make sure in those scenarios, we wouldn't be reaching for that child with force, right? We wouldn't be forcefully having that child come to us, right? We would take a gentle approach. We certainly wouldn't ask the child, "What's wrong with you?" You know what I mean?
Mhm.
We would ask, "What happened to you?" And we would listen. And and so I like to kind of put that in perspective for people, because if you can look from the outside of yourself in that way, as if it was a child that wasn't within you, but maybe just a child that was bullied or had some sort of traumatic experience, you would know how to approach that individual because you're coming from a caring place. So you would be gentle, right? You would ask questions that's going to be helpful, not more harmful. So I think from that standpoint, just like you said, and I 100% agree, that's how we really should approach a situation like that with ourselves. And it's more effective to ask, what happened to you,
Mhm.
rather than what's wrong with you.
Yeah.
It sounds different, it feels different. So I think
Mhm.
that's more palpable, right, when people can look at it from that perspective.
I so agree. Yeah. And it's
Mhm.
like being the person that you needed all
Yeah,
along. Maybe you didn't have, but you can become that person to yourself now as you heal
absolutely,
and be
for
gentle with
sure.
yourself. Yeah. And use kind
Hmm.
words, right? A
Hmm.
lot of us will internalize messaging that it was never for us, that was meant to
Yeah.
actually like try to take us down a notch. And we're telling
Hmm.
ourselves these messages inside over and over on repeat. When you
Yeah.
become aware of that, I think you mentioned this too yesterday. Awareness is the first step. You can
First
become
step.
aware that I'm bullying myself inside,
Yep.
right? And then you can take a different turn. I no longer want to be my own bully. I want to
Hmm.
heal this. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I love
absolutely.
that, and that's very true. I agree.
Yeah. Just going to read a few comments here. Latrice says, our culture is rooted in blaming and shaming. It is.
Yeah.
It absolutely is. Yeah. Oh, good, good. Just subscribed as well. Loving this conversation. Thank you. Thank you.
So great.
Yes. Yes. Mid XOXO hello says, after almost 10 years in therapy, I'm going through a trauma informed approach. Oh, wow. And it's been life changing. No longer
Hmm.
looking at myself as a problem has been so
Love that.
healing.
Awesome.
Oh, yes.
Good for you.
Celebrating you. Celebrating you. Alicia says, yes, I've literally journaled that through tears. The soul is exhausted. Thank you for this.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. And like you said, the physical symptoms that we may be
Yeah.
experiencing, could it be your soul? I don't
Right.
think a lot of us ask ourselves that question. Could it be your soul that's
Right.
actually tired?
Yeah, we're
Mm.
looking in the wrong places. We're thinking it's that, and we're wondering when we go to, the doctor to get checked out, right? We're like, well, I'm feeling exhausted. I'm having chronic fatigue. I can't seem to get enough rest. I'm having all of these physical symptoms, and then the doctor can't find anything wrong with you. They're never going to find anything wrong with you because they can't open up your soul, right? And say, I've got
Mm.
the diagnosis. right? So that's something that you have to go deeper within yourself to find and discover and uncover that, and then you can operate from that place, right? Because and unless and until then, we won't be able to operate at a higher level of awareness until we recognize that that's where the problem stems from.
That's very true. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, the doctor cannot take apart your soul and see what's
Nope,
wrong. That's very
that's right.
true. Yep. Yep. And for those of us who are like new on this journey of understanding how
Yeah.
bullying has impacted us, healing, like any first steps you would recommend to try to peel back those layers, as you said, to uncover the deeper wounds that may be affecting you?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Can you ask the question again?
Yeah. So, like any first steps for people who
Oh,
are new to this journey of healing, understanding how bullying has impacted them,
yeah,
any first steps that they can take to begin that journey of peeling back the layers and understanding the deeper traumas that may be there?
yeah. Um, a lot of things are coming to mind right now, and I want to give information that's going to be really helpful for first steps, because the first step is the most important step.
Mhm.
So I would say I tend to think of things in a step-by-step process, I guess, like a nurse, right? So um, I guess to give you something more practical that you can actually put in place as soon as today, I'm going to give you like my ABCDE formula. This is something I use for myself. So the first thing I would say is we never want to take any radical action without first assessing. So start by asking yourself, who's running my life? Who's running the show here, right?
Ooh.
Is it the healed version of me, or is it the wounded inner child in me, right? And then in order to be prepared for the answer that comes, the B in this equation is to breathe. Because as you
Mm.
reflect on these questions, I want you to remember to breathe through your answers, because it helps process the truth. It helps to digest the truth, because the truth can be hard to face, right? Then I would say the C is to take comfort. Take comfort in knowing that there is no wrong or right answers. Okay. The only answers are the answers that feel good and right for you. Okay. It's different for everybody. So you're the adult, you get to make the decisions. That's the good news.
Mm.
The D is then to decide. Once you've reflected, um, decide on whether or not you're going to be the one to get in the driver's seat of your life and take control of the wheel. Or are you going to continue to let the wounded part of you control your destiny and your destination? This is the part that you take responsibility for your own healing. Okay. And then
Mm.
I would say the E in that is to execute. Now it's time to take action, radical action, right? Because we want transformation. And if you're truly committed to your transformation, then you're going to go back and rescue that inner child who's wounded, sitting crouched down somewhere in the corner of your soul in a dark place, not knowing what to do because they're wounded. Reconnect with that inner self and begin guiding that child within you with compassion and wisdom. And then I would say therapy is a big part of this process, because it's so important to normalize seeking professional help, especially in the Black communities, because stigma, unfortunately, still exists. So that's what I do. That's what's helped me. And that's how I teach both my clients and my patients kind of to go through that process to help themselves.
Wow.
Nobody's
I
coming to
gotta.
save you. You gotta rescue yourself, girl. You gotta rescue yourself.
Wow.
These are at least some tools
Mhm.
in my CPR and AED toolbox, the nurse that I am, okay? These are the tools that's gonna help.
Thank you so much for that. I have to run that back. ABCDE. Wow. That
Yeah,
is so, and even being a social worker, right? Like the easy things that you can grasp onto as
yeah.
you're new to this journey, right? Something like that is so easy to be like, okay, walk yourself through these steps. When you feel
Mm-hmm.
yourself like being triggered or starting to spiral, it's like
Yeah.
take back control, like you said, because the healing is in
Yep.
your hands. It
Yep.
really is. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, I
Yeah.
hope that's helpful for some of you who are going through this healing process right now. Yes,
Yes. Yes.
Latrice, give it a
Latrice.
try and let us know how that works out for you, or definitely pass this information along. You guys be sure to share this video, okay? We're dropping gems today.
Yes, yes, yes. Absolutely. But yeah, I do want to ask you how the experiences of being bullied has informed the work that you do now as a coach for powerhouse women entrepreneurs, and also a mental health advocate.
That's a really great question. The effects of bullying have shaped so much of my work, Marissa. Whether it happens in childhood or adulthood, bullying can have profound impacts on every aspect of our life, especially mentally and physically, and our overall health and well-being, right? The stress from hostile environments, be it at work or at home, which is really bad. That's a double whammy. But that can
Mhm.
lead to some chronic health issues like anxiety and depression and OCD and PTSD and a whole host
Mhm.
of other issues. I've been clinically diagnosed with all of the above. Okay. But recognizing these signs early on is crucial, not just for our survival, but for us to have the ability to thrive. So in my coaching and advocacy, mental health is really the foundation of everything. Really, it affects how we think, how we feel, how we make decisions, how we behave, how we interact with others. So the programs and the frameworks that I now use and that I've developed, my proprietary CPR and AED systems, are really about helping women to revive their lives and their legacies. I teach women how to reclaim their health, their healing, and their power, allowing them to build a life that reflects their true worth and their potential, and really one that aligns with her deepest aspirations, her dreams, her values. And so that's really important work to do and to get connected with. So, yeah, I would say that's how childhood bullying, has really informed my work today.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And just like from my own personal experience, right? Now that I'm at the point I shared this like a little bit with you, but like realizing, especially as an entrepreneur, how often these wounds are showing up
Mm,
from childhood bullying. And just like leaning into that and sharing my story authentically has been so healing. And it's attracted other people to me who are going through similar things. I think that's the power of storytelling. When we share our
yes.
stories, it's like we realize we're not alone in any of
Oh, no.
this. Hmm.
Absolutely. That's the best part, though, right? Because sometimes we can really feel like we are on this journey alone, even though logically we know it can't be true. We know somebody out in the world has got to be going through what we're going through. The problem
Right.
is we don't normalize having these conversations openly and outwardly, right? We've got to start having these conversations out loud so that other women can start healing, so that women know that they are not alone, so that we can start forming sisterhoods, right? Sometimes our soul really does need a sisterhood, especially if we don't have therapy. And even when we are in therapy, that's just that's the added support system that we're often missing. So, getting into the right spaces, into the right rooms, into the right communities, and forming those sisterhoods is key.
Yes, I so agree. Yeah. And that is
Mhm.
what we're often missing. Even
Yep.
thinking about my own experiences in therapy, it's like there was always something missing from that. And it was
Mhm.
sisterhood. It really was.
Mhm.
Someone who actually understood what I was going through outside of like the clinical setting, which can be
Mhm.
helpful, right, for some cases, but to be able to just share what you're going through without judgment, I feel like
Yep.
that's really key to healing as well. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm so
Absolutely.
glad that you found sisterhood and connected with the right women, and that's helped. That's become a part of your healing process. Sister
Yes.
friends, yes, girl, yes.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. But yeah, I want to ask how we can take our power back and begin to find our authentic selves after surviving something like childhood bullying, which may have compromised our authentic selves. How do we go back and find who we are again?
For sure, I think using the ABC approach, ABCDE approach that I talked about earlier, that's probably going to be the best place to start. Um, and then just reaffirming your truth,
Mm,
reinforcing your truth, and just not being afraid to dig deeper, and really, really connecting with your inner self and doing your soul work, right? I I just don't know a better way to really get there other than the ABCDE approach we talked about, but And, that's work you can do on your own, but it also means that when you have somebody who is actually a professional at looking at these seemingly non-important things that, things that we kind of brush off and say, oh, well, this isn't like that big of a deal, or this, like we need to get somebody who really is trained professionally to be able to ask the right questions and push the right buttons that we don't know to ask ourselves, right? We don't know the right buttons to push or the right questions to ask necessarily. And these trained professionals do from a scientific standpoint. So I often tell women, look, you're not the specialist here, right? You're the specialist of you, and knowing how you feel, and be true to that. But don't mistake that for, the help that you actually need to be receiving from a professional. And the reason why I say that is that oftentimes, far too often, actually, we are self-diagnosing and therefore misdiagnosing ourselves. And we need to make sure that we get in front of the right people who can kind of not only dig deeper, but like really peel back the layers that we don't even realize is there, right? Asking a lot of why questions. As I've been going through this healing journey, I have asked myself so many why questions. And when I come up with an answer, I ask myself, why that? And when I come up with that answer, why that? And I keep going and going and going deeper and deeper and deeper, because that's really how we get to the core, So I don't know if I hope I've answered the question, but those are definitely some of the first steps. And I wouldn't say this process is easy at all. Okay. At all. But it does get easier as you start to heal. And you'll know that, you're healing because it's getting easier. So it takes time. Give yourself some grace, give yourself the space to go through the process and understand that it really and truly is a journey.
I love that. You know that you're healing because it gets easier. It does. And some days it can feel like you're not making any progress at all.
Yeah.
But trusting in the longer journey, right? As
Yeah.
you start to implement those small changes day to day, you'll look back and be like, I am not the same person that I was like a month ago. And all the progress that you've made, it's important to celebrate yourself for that as well.
It really is. That's really important too. I'm glad you brought that up, actually, because it really is important to celebrate your small feats, right? No matter how small or big they are, they all matter. Otherwise, what are you doing this all for, right? You've got to celebrate yourself along the way. You've got to pat yourself on the back and give yourself a hug and show yourself some love, because this is important work you're doing. And every milestone matters. So definitely celebrate yourself for sure.
I love that. Yeah, every milestone matters. It does. It doesn't matter how small, right? The fact that you're making progress, as you said, this is not an easy journey. You're having to go back to very painful, traumatic events. And like you said, like it will be really helpful, right? If you have a trained professional to help you with that process. Because once you start to open that, new things can pop to the surface that you may have suppressed, right?
Yeah.
And so having someone with that background, that clinical license can be really helpful to walk you through that process.
Sure. Yeah.
Yep. Yes, I do want to ask your clients, right? How do you address the unique challenges of your clients, women of color, women over 40, women of the LGBTQ plus community that may stem from childhood bullying?
Truthfully, I would say probably the biggest thing I do and the best thing I can do, and you mentioned this earlier, is to really share my story and give God the glory. I address these challenges by being completely transparent about my own experiences. And so you mentioned earlier the power of storytelling, and it really is true. When I share my story, when we share our stories and speak our truths, right, especially with the women that I work with, they can see themselves in me. They can see themselves in us, right? And so that gives people hope. Hope is sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone. So I create a space where women can have real, raw, relatable conversations about the things that are left unsaid, the things that are going down in the background and going on behind our closed doors and ain't nobody talking about. So each group faces unique challenges. And so my goal is to always meet these women right where they are. I will eventually help to push them past their comfort level, because transformation lives on the other side of your comfort zone. But I would say, whether it's overcoming self-doubt or healing from trauma or transitioning from a career, one that no longer serves you, a toxic job, hostile work environments, or building a thriving business, you know what? I provide the tools, the guidance, and the support, and the continued empowerment that women need, that's specific to their journey.
I love that. And I do want to talk about your ebook, as I said, Mindset Mastery.
Yeah.
Anything that you want to share around that? And I'll link it in the chat.
Yes, that is a great read. I created this book around learning the 5 pillars of success, but I call out imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is an absolute scam, and women, especially Black women, brown women, women of color, are buying into it. And I know people think it's a real thing, but I'm a whole nurse over here, and I can tell you it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist, except it exists in your mind, right? But if you were to go again to a doctor and say, hey, doc, I have imposter syndrome, I'm sure that I'm diagnosed with this imposter syndrome. What's the prognosis, doc? What does it look like? How bad is it? I can tell you, nowhere in the history of the DSM, okay, is there a diagnosis for imposter syndrome. It only exists in your mind. So this guide is around your limiting beliefs and how you can take your misfortunes and your circumstances currently and make them your power, change them into your wins, right? Change your misfortunes into fortunes. And so don't believe the hype about imposter syndrome. Make sure that you get this ebook if you really need help mastering your mindset, because before you can do anything in life, we've got to master our minds, right? So start there. And you can find the book. I think, Marissa, you do have the link, and if not, I'm happy to provide it.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, and I think that's so important, right? And I talk about on my channel, like the impacts of oppression. Oppression lives in our minds, right?
Yes, it does.
And so to be able to understand that these are the impacts of oppression, this is not you, right? Rejecting the tendency to internalize what we experience externally as something's wrong with us. We're in an oppressive environment. So it's like taking back power over your own mind, right? I think that's powerful and key to healing. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. But yeah, I want to ask the importance of intersectionality in talking about the effects of bullying. And intersectionality is just the multiple systems of oppression that Black women face. Having multiple identities within an oppressive society, right? Oppression comes at us from multiple angles. So yeah, just the effects of that when it comes to bullying. Anything you'd like to share?
Yes, that's such a great question. I'm glad you asked the question. We don't talk enough about this, but intersectionality is crucial because it helps us to understand that bullying and trauma don't exist in a vacuum, right? For example, being a Black woman, an older woman, a woman of certain age, okay, a woman over 40, 50, 60s and beyond, those of you, myself included, who are part of the LGBTQ plus community, means that you may be faced with multiple layers of discrimination and mistreatment, right? So the effects of bullying can really be intensified by these intersecting identities, right? When we talk about bullying through the lens of intersectionality, we can better address the unique challenges faced by marginalized groups and offer more of a holistic approach. So I think it's so important to continue to have these discussions around intersectionality. for that very reason. And certainly we don't, again, like I say, especially in our communities, talk enough about it and how that is problematic or could be problematic for us.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's so important. Something I try to highlight all the time on my channel, right? The
Mm-hmm.
intersecting oppressive systems that we're experiencing day to day that we may not even be aware of. And
Yeah.
again, if we're not aware of them, we may be internalizing the treatment that we're experiencing, thinking something's wrong with
Mm-hmm.
us,
Mm-hmm.
versus it being an unsafe environment that you're in.
Yeah, for
Really,
sure.
yeah. And beginning to like reclaim yourself and lean into
Mm-hmm.
self love and realize that nothing's ever wrong with you. I
That's
think that's
right.
so powerful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And Latrice says, we are each in full control of our experiences. That's what I'm working on mastering. Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
I
great to
love that.
hear.
I love that.
And yes, she's
Yes.
absolutely right. Right. Full control. Take back that
Yes.
will. If you're not in control, we got to take the will.
But yeah, you mentioned something about migraines too. Want to make sure I touch on that because I'm also a
Oh.
migraine sufferer. And in combing through my childhood, realizing it started in middle school when I was
Mm,
experiencing bullying, I would have migraine attacks where my vision would go out in one of my eyes, right? And I still experience those like on occasion. So just
mm-hmm.
like the connections as we're starting to realize like the physical symptoms of
Mm-hmm.
bullying. Anything you
Yeah.
want to share around that? Like how might that show up in the body?
Wow. Yeah. Migraines are so tough to deal with, right? Because sometimes we don't really know what the root cause is. But I can tell you from someone who experienced migraine headaches, it can absolutely be debilitating, especially if we don't know what the cause is. But if, because there's so many varying things that attribute to migraine headaches that can actually trigger them, right? That can make them worse. For me, I used to get migraines and let's see, this was many years ago when I actually was in nursing school. So I thought it was really brought on, and it probably was triggered by the stress of nursing school, right? But I would get like, I wouldn't always recognize it as a migraine headache. Sometimes you think it's just a headache. You kind of brush it off, or
Mhm.
you might pop a couple of pills, to get rid of the pain. If you don't recognize it at the onset, what oftentimes happens is it can actually linger for days. And that's what would actually happen to me. So I would get migraines, say like I got a migraine headache today, and as the day goes on, like you, I would actually get an aura with mines, meaning I would
Mhm.
actually get, I would get the signs, right? The floaters was my thing. I would
Yeah,
get those
me too.
floaters, and then I would know, okay, one's coming on. And every noise, the lighting, the sounds around me, it was just a dark place to be. And it would literally change my plans,
Mhm.
for whatever I had going on, because I couldn't do anything. But unfortunately, because life had to go on and I had to keep, life keeps life in. And so you can't just stop living. But I would get migraine headaches like 2, 3, 4 times a month that will last 2 to 3, sometimes 4 days at a time. So as you
Wow.
can imagine, having about 15 days worth of migraine headaches half the month was very debilitating, right? And so I had to learn how to deal with it and how to tolerate it, really, because we couldn't figure out how to treat the problem. Um, and it really wasn't until, so there were several things that was happening to me. I can't just say it was um, just due to the stress. It was some other issues that was going on.
Mhm.
Um, like, menstrual issues that I was having that kind of like attributed to the situation. But over time, I really learned how to manage it. I started like keep a journal to think about like, hey, what's actually going on here? Like when I'm triggered,
Yeah.
when this onset occurs, what's happening? What's going on in my life, so that I can start to manage those and minimize them, right? Based on knowing what I know as I journal through that. So I think women who do suffer from migraine headaches certainly get medical help for it, because this is not something you can just make go away on your own, especially if there are some deeper underlying issues that need to be addressed. But from the spiritual sense, I think I just really kind of got deeper, more deeply connected in spirituality, doing a lot more praying and meditating, which really, really helped to, I would say, not necessarily they didn't just go away, but they were minimized for the most part, until we could fix the medical issues that I was having as a part of this experience. So again, fibroids was a big part of this. And so until I got rid of the fibroids, those migraine headaches were coming on strong.
Oh, wow. I never
Yeah.
knew there was a connection between the two.
Yeah,
Wow.
there were. And
Wow.
fibroids, for anyone who doesn't know, for the most part, it's benign. It's a benign medical condition, but a lot of women do experience that, right? Especially in your perimenopausal or premenopausal phases. So I'm postmenopausal now, right? However, when at that stage in my life, it just seemed like eternity. Like it just didn't feel like I was ever going to ever, like live a normal life per se, normal life.
Right.
So yeah, I feel for anybody who goes through that. In fact, one of my VAs, she's young, she's only 19, and she's experiencing that now. And hers, as young as she is due to some of it stress, yes, but also from her menses. So her menstrual cycle brings them on very strongly. So there is a correlation there that a lot of women aren't familiar with and don't know anything about, unfortunately. Wow. And it's not like she can, she's only 19. You can't just get rid of your menses, right, at that age. Right. Now, thankfully for me, being postmenopausal, I don't, and I don't have those issues now. But she's young. She's got a ways to go.
Right. I appreciate you sharing that with us. Yeah, and that just brings up something I've been thinking about. We don't really know our bodies, right? We really don't know what's going on inside, or even signs to look for. Right. And there's a lot of reasons for this, but I think even being like educated in a space like this about things that could potentially be occurring, right? And then seeking like medical advice to get it confirmed, that's huge. Because we'll feel the symptoms, but we won't know what's going on. And so some of us will try to like act like it's not there until it gets so loud where we can't ignore it anymore. Yeah,
it's true. Women especially, we're the worst, right? And nurses, we're the worst too. We don't take our own advice. We're giving the advice to our patients, but we're not taking our own advice. When these things happen, listen, it really is truth to be said, right? When we talk about the body keeps the score and the issues are in the tissues and all of those things. Your body is talking to you loud and clear. The question becomes, are you listening? Right? Are you listening? So it's going to whisper to you at first, right? It's going to give you these little signs and symptoms are going to show up, and you might brush them off at first. You might say, well, I've been working a lot and that's why I'm tired, or I've been stressed and that's why I have a headache, or this job is driving me crazy, or I'm having some relationship issues, or perhaps this is going on, or whatever. And we're going to make all of these excuses that at first sound valid, right? They seem valid, and they are perhaps valid excuses. But when your body starts to show more signs and symptoms, and these issues are not going away, we want to take preventative measures, right? Because if we don't take preventative measures, then we're asking for trouble. Because it's kind of like, your car has to be maintenance, right? To use this analogy. You can't drive this car forever without giving it an oil change, without getting the brakes fixed, right? Without getting, the engine checked out, without getting the tires rotated or changed. You've got to maintain your car or it's going to break down. And your body is the same. So pay particular attention to, and don't wait for these issues to occur. You should always be going to get checked out preventatively to make sure that you're okay, right? That's the maintenance part. But when your body is yelling and screaming at you with all of these issues that something ain't right, you got to get in the doctor's office and find out what's going on. Ask the questions. It's not right. You're not feeling right. You are the expert in this area, and this is where you go to your doctor as the expert of your body, and you tell the doctor, look, doc, I don't know what's up, but something's wrong, and we've got to find out what it is. We've got to figure it out, and we've got to fix whatever the problem is, because I'm not feeling my best, and I need to know what to do about the issues that I'm experiencing right now. And keep going to a different doctor and a different specialist, getting a second and a third opinion if you have to, until you find that individual, that specialist who's going to be able to help you. Don't just take their word for it. Don't just brush it off. If they're telling you, we ran some tests and we can't find anything, we're going to give you a couple of pills that never fixes it. No, you need to go find somebody who's actually going to listen to you, hear you, and actually find the problem and the solution.
Mm-hmm. That's so true. And yeah, the advice that you may have to get a second opinion.
Yeah.
Right. That's true. That's true. Just like being a social worker in this field, not all of us are the same. So sometimes you have to try out multiple doctors to make sure they're listening to you and actually hearing your concerns. That's so important. That's so important. Yeah. Hey, Jordan. Yes, Black women's pain and suffering is constantly ignored due to medical racism. So I love this conversation is happening. Yeah. 100%. 100%. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, getting back to the topic, self-doubt may arise from things like childhood bullying, mistreatment throughout our lives. Any advice that you would give to Black women who are watching, who are dealing with self-doubt, trying to get to this authentic version of themselves, but doubting themselves every step of the way? Any advice you would give?
I think the first advice, and kind of going back to that part of that first step, right, is to recognize that self-doubt often stems from the unhealed wounds of childhood. So we have to acknowledge that hurt. Okay, it's very real. That hurt that we experience as adults. I know, some people may feel uncomfortable with that and embarrassed about it, because they're like, if they talk about this out loud to people who don't understand, that might kind of be brushed off, and people might respond in a way that's not helpful and that's not healing, right? Like, girl, that's so long ago. You ain't over that yet, as grown as you are. Kind of thing. Those are not the kind of supportive people, right? Obviously, that you want to be around. Those are people who themselves are hurt, unhealed people. So acknowledge that your experience is real and what you're feeling is very real. Okay. And then, just acknowledge that the hurt is still influencing you in your adult life. And that's okay, as long as you recognize it, right? How we see ourselves as adults, how we feel about ourselves as adults stems from our childhood. So it's important to nurture the inner child with a lot of love and compassion, and replace the negative beliefs with internalized, empowering, reaffirming feelings, right? And empowering truths. Don't let nobody tell you how you feel and should feel and how you should be over it, because grieving is a process. And sometimes, I don't believe we ever really get to a place in life where we have just healed. We're just healed completely. I think we are always healing some aspect of our lives, always. So, be encouraged by that. I also encourage surrounding yourself with a supportive community, right? Seeking therapy for sure, to help untangle those deeply rooted feelings of doubt. And remember that you have the power to rewrite your story and take control of the narrative, especially the narrative. I call them the dialogue demons, right? The dialogue demons are just going off in your mind, and you're like, what in the hell is going on up here? And they just got you trapped. Well, that's exactly where demons get you, trapped. Don't let them incarcerate your mind, escape that. Okay. So that, and then, like I said, you're in control, rewrite the narrative, rewrite your chapter. What does your next chapter look like? That's entirely up to you, because you are the author of your story, right? You are the CEO of your life. So it looks like however you want it to look, however you envision it to look, as long as you're willing to roll up your sleeves, get in the trenches, and do the work. It does take work. It's not going to just come by osmosis, right? It's not going to come, just because we want it to. And it certainly isn't going to happen if we're ignoring it. So I would say take heed to that for sure. And yeah, I think that's what I definitely where I would start.
Thank you for that. Thank you. I'm
For
going to read a
sure.
few comments and then ask if you have any tools or resources to share. Let's see.
Okay.
Listen Up Democracy says, it took me years to forgive my childhood bully. Forgiveness is key. And when she died suddenly, I was shook. That isn't what I wanted for her. Wow.
Oh.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. And that can be complicated, right? Those
Mm-hmm.
feelings. So it's important to leave space for all those emotions that you're feeling when
For
something like that
sure.
happens. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Jordan says, You Are What Your Grandparents Ate is a good book I've been reading. Oh, really? That talks about generational trauma and epigenetics. Thank you for that.
Love that. I'll
Ooh,
definitely have to cop a copy of that. Generational.
yeah, I love that. Tenacity says we have to reparent ourselves because the damage started from the family was all design. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Reparenting
Mm-hmm.
ourselves for sure. Because
Mm-hmm.
that child, because they didn't know any better, they were wounded, right? All your adult life has been giving you bad advice, and you've been taking it and self-sabotaging and getting in your own way. So we definitely have to reparent that child. So now that they
Absolutely.
know better, because now you're operating from a higher level of awareness and hopefully a healed place or a healing place, right? And so that's really important. So thank you for bringing that up for sure.
Yeah. Any resources or tools that you would like to share with Black women who are in the process of healing from childhood bullying and processing what they went through?
Yeah, since we're on the topic of books that someone mentioned, I think a really good book to pick up. I'm trying to remember the author. Let's see if I have it over here. Uh, I do not, but it's called, and you can Google it on Amazon. You'll find The Body Keeps the Score is a really, really good
Oh,
book.
yeah. Uh-huh.
That's a really good book I always recommend when we're talking about this. And then let's see, Black Line. It's a 24/7 national crisis support hotline for Black and Brown women and women of the LGBTQ plus communities, offering peer support and counseling. So I would start there.
Okay.
And then Therapy for Black Girls. It's a fantastic database where we can, it's full of trusted resources, culturally competent therapists, trauma informed therapists who understand the unique experiences of Black women. And then
Mhm.
NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, is one that's my go to. That's an organization that offers a wealth of resources when we're talking about mental health illnesses and just keeping our mental health in check. I'm personally involved with NAMI as a speaker and as a provider for them, so I highly recommend them. Just all you have to do is just call them up or visit your local chapter for support. So I think those are some great resources for sure.
Thank you. Thank you for
You're
that.
welcome. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's important if you have resources, right, please share those below in the comments if you're watching the replay, because I feel like the more that we can share with each other, right, the more we can collectively heal. So,
Mm,
yes, please share any resources that have been helpful for you as you've been recovering, healing, understanding what happened to you in childhood with us so that we can learn too. But as we're wrapping up, I'd love to ask if you could go back and tell your younger self what you know now. What advice would you give to her?
I think this is such a beautiful question, Marissa. Let me share that over the years, I have written myself quite a few love letters, right? Writing has always been my strong suit, my strong point. It's always been very therapeutic for me along my healing journey from a very young age, as I shared with you before we hopped on this live. I am a writer and a singer, and music is my first love. And so lyrics and poetry and all the writings that, diaries I've kept and all of that has been a really big part of my healing journey. So, what would I say to my younger self as I sit here before you today with a healed heart and clarity that I have now? I think to be really honest and to go deep, you have to speak from a place of vulnerability. And so I'm going to be vulnerable in this moment and say that as I'm speaking to myself, um, I would say, sweetheart, you're too young to understand this now, but God has planted a seed in you that is going to nurture your entire soul. I would tell her that everything you are going through, you are growing through. And even though your healing journey won't be easy, keep showing up for yourself, keep doing the work, because you are being properly groomed and prepared and uniquely and perfectly positioned to heal the internal wounds of so many women around the world with the power of your words. So in this moment, what I know for sure, coming from a healed place and having so much clarity now, I want you to hold on to my words. Accept who you've been, embrace who you be, and make room and prepare yourself for who you are becoming. And just know that your life is blessed. Your future is beautiful and bright. And girl, you're going to be all right. You are going to be all right. And that's what I would tell my young self.
Wow. That was beautiful. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. That was beautiful.
Yeah,
Beautiful. Yes. Yeah. Self love always wins. Yeah.
for sure. Yes, for
Yes.
sure. Got to have
Mhm.
self-love. I mean, we are the first person to love ourselves, or to perhaps our mothers, right? First, and God, of course, but we are the first to teach others how to love us. And so we've got to learn how to love ourselves in the most complete way. And then we
Mhm.
can teach others how to do the same, right?
Yes. Absolutely. We got tears in the audience. I know I was tearing up.
Aw,
So
you're
thank
welcome. Thank
you.
you. I'm so glad. Thank you so
Yes.
much.
Yes, that was beautiful. But yeah, how can people continue to follow your journey online and connect with you for coaching and any other things that you'd like to share before we wrap up?
Sure. Um, you can connect with me on all platforms. I'm on all social, at One Shared Vision. That's ONE spelled out, Shared Vision. And a few resources that might help you aside from my ebook might be my #1 best-selling book on Amazon. It is titled Live with Your Regrets, Die with Your Dreams, or Choose to Walk in Your Awesomeness. And that's where I go deeper into sharing more about my personal journey and how others can find, their own path to greatness. So that might be another way. And then, of course, I'm offering a complimentary clarity call to discuss how I can further support you on your personal and professional journey. And you can, again, connect with me either in the DMs, or my DMs are inundated. So forgive me in advance if I can't get to them all. But certainly you can hop on a call with me and we can dive deeper. All of my resources, as Marissa is thank you, Marissa, for putting them up here. For those of you who are connecting with me on the other platforms, you can go to the link in my bio and you'll see my link tree link there, and all of the same resources that we're mentioning today will be there.
I love it. I love it. And yes, thank y'all so much for sharing in the chat everything that you shared.
Yeah,
As
thank
we're
you for the
winding
love.
down, yeah, just want to thank you for being here, Catrina, sharing everything that you've shared with us so generously. And just like to ask, there any last words you'd like to leave the audience with tonight?
Well, thank you so much, Marissa. It's been an absolute pleasure. It really has. I'm super excited about this talk. It's just really my passion, and I'm happy to be here to impart, wisdom and words of encouragement to the women who are here showing up for themselves, not just for us. This is important work we're doing, right? So it's really important that you get connected to other women like this in our community. So I would say definitely come back and hang out with us on our platforms, right? Marissa's doing a great job. People like Dr. Kamani and Stephanie Perry, shout out,
Mm.
Rashida Dow, right? These are
Mhm.
women who, we kind of all run in the same circle, and we are all about healing as well. So, um, I would just say remember that your story it's really your superpower, right? And healing starts with a single decision. When we heal collectively, we pave the way for others to heal, right? And to know that it's okay. We give people permission to realize, it's okay that I'm going through a healing process and I realize I'm not alone. So, and I believe, just to kind of piggyback on what you said a little bit earlier, Marissa, together, I too believe that we can create a ripple effect of healing and empowerment all around the globe,
Hmm.
one woman at a time. So,
I agree.
so
I
I'm just
agree.
so happy to be a part of this with you, and I look forward to our continued work together.
Yes, me too. Me too. And yeah, I feel like the more of us share our stories, right, it creates that like kinetic energy, right? When we
Yes.
see more people
Oh, I love
feeling
that.
open, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
feeling open to share what they've been through, and then we realize we're not alone in this
Mm,
life thing, that a lot of us have been through the same things. And
mm-hmm.
that's tremendously healing,
Yeah,
right? So,
you're
yes, your story is your superpower. I love that.
for sure. Thank
Yeah.
you so much. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you for being here again. Thank y'all again for being in the chat, everything you shared with us tonight. Yeah. And until next time, y'all, thank y'all for being here. Bye.